Most people's minds are made of glass. One rejection and they shatter. One failure and they give up on their dreams forever. One criticism and they spiral into weeks of self-doubt. But what if I told you that you could build mental armor so strong that nothing could break you? Not failure, not rejection, not criticism, not even years of struggle and setbacks. Today, you're going to learn the exact techniques used by Navy SEALs, elite athletes, and billionaire entrepreneurs to build minds that cannot be broken. By the time you finish this, you'll understand how to construct psychological defenses that are literally impenetrable. You'll become the kind of person who gets stronger under pressure while others crumble. This isn't theory. This isn't motivation. This is mental warfare training for your mind. And if you apply what you learn today, you will never be the same person again. Chapter 1: The Mental Warfare Crisis. Your mind is under attack right now. Every single day, forces beyond your control are trying to break you down, weaken your resolve, and turn you into another victim of circumstance. The stress of modern life, the constant negativity, the endless distractions, the fear-mongering media, toxic people who drain your energy, social media algorithms designed to make you feel inadequate, economic uncertainty that breeds anxiety, political polarization that creates division, technological disruption that makes everything feel unstable. They're all weapons in a war being waged against your mental strength. And here's the brutal truth. Most people are losing this war. They're walking around with minds made of glass, shattering at the first sign of real pressure. One rejection from a job interview and they convince themselves they're unemployable. One failed relationship and they decide they're unlovable. One business setback and they abandon their entrepreneurial dreams. One harsh comment from a stranger online and they question their entire self-worth. One unexpected bill and they spiral into financial panic. One health scare and they become paralyzed by mortality fears. These people have turned themselves into psychological casualties without even realizing it. They've surrendered control of their mental state to external circumstances. They've made their inner peace dependent on things they cannot control. They've programmed themselves to be victims of whatever life throws at them. But what if I told you that you could build mental armor so strong that nothing could penetrate it? What if you could develop a mind so unbreakable that challenges actually make you stronger? What if you could become the kind of person who thrives under pressure while others crumble? What if you could train your brain to see opportunity where others see only threat, growth where others see only pain, possibility where others see only limitation? This isn't motivational fluff or positive thinking nonsense. This is psychological warfare training for your mind. This is applied neuroscience. This is the systematic development of mental resilience using proven techniques that have been tested in the highest pressure situations imaginable. By the time you finish this comprehensive training, you'll understand exactly how to construct mental defenses that are literally impenetrable. You'll learn the same techniques used by Navy SEALs who perform life or death missions under extreme pressure. Elite athletes who compete on the world's biggest stages. Special Forces operators who remain calm during combat. Emergency room doctors who make critical decisions during chaos. Astronauts who function effectively in the most hostile environment possible. Billionaire entrepreneurs who build empires despite constant setbacks. And world-class performers who excel when everyone is watching. The difference between those who succeed at the highest levels and those who remain trapped in mediocrity isn't talent, luck, genetics, or circumstances. It's mental resilience. It's the ability to take hits and keep moving forward. It's having a mind that gets stronger with every challenge instead of weaker. It's developing psychological antibodies that make you immune to the mental viruses that infect most people. Most people think mental toughness is something you're born with. They believe some people are just naturally stronger, naturally more resilient, naturally better at handling pressure. This is a lie that keeps them weak. Mental toughness is a skill that can be developed. Mental armor is something that can be built systematically. And anyone can do it if they understand the right techniques and commit to the right training. The problem is nobody teaches you this stuff in school. Educational systems don't include courses on mental resilience, emotional regulation, or psychological self-defense. Parents don't know how to build mental toughness in their children because they never learned it themselves. Society actually encourages mental weakness by promoting victim mentality, teaching people to avoid discomfort, encouraging them to seek safety at all costs, and telling them to express every feeling they have without any filter or self-control. Modern culture has created a generation of psychological weaklings who crumble at the first sign of adversity. They need safe spaces to protect them from ideas that might challenge their worldview. They require trigger warnings to avoid content that might cause mild discomfort. They demand participation trophies to protect their self-esteem from the reality of failure. They seek therapy for problems that previous generations solved through character development and personal responsibility. But the elite know better. They understand that mental strength is the foundation of all achievement. They know that without an unbreakable mind, everything else is worthless. You can have all the talent in the world, all the knowledge, all the opportunities, all the resources, all the connections, but if your mind breaks under pressure, you'll never reach your potential. You'll always be limited by your psychological fragility. The strongest people in history didn't achieve greatness despite their challenges. They achieved greatness because of their challenges. Every obstacle they faced, every setback they endured, every failure they experienced became raw material for building stronger mental armor. They understood that adversity is not the enemy of success. It's the creator of success. Consider the most successful people you admire. Every single one of them has faced rejection, criticism, failure, doubt, fear, uncertainty, financial pressure, personal attacks, health challenges, relationship problems, and periods of deep struggle. The difference is they didn't let these experiences break them. Instead, they used them as training exercises that made their minds unbreakable. Today, that changes for you. Today you start building mental armor that nothing can penetrate. Today you begin the transformation from psychological victim to mental warrior. Today you commit to developing the kind of mind that cannot be broken by anything life throws at you. Chapter 2. The Anatomy of Mental Weakness. Before you can build an unbreakable mind, you need to understand exactly how minds break. Most people's mental defenses are so weak that they're practically inviting attack. They've unknowingly programmed themselves for failure and they don't even realize it. They've created psychological vulnerabilities that make them sitting ducks for every challenge, setback, and criticism they encounter. Understanding mental weakness isn't about judging or criticizing people who struggle. It's about identifying the specific patterns that create psychological fragility so you can systematically eliminate them from your own mental programming. It's about recognizing the enemy so you can defeat it decisively. The first fundamental weakness is emotional reactivity. Most people are controlled by their emotions instead of controlling them. They are like emotional pinballs bouncing from one feeling to another based on whatever happens around them. Someone says something negative to them and they immediately feel hurt, angry, or defensive. They encounter an obstacle and they immediately feel frustrated or overwhelmed. They face uncertainty and they immediately feel anxious or fearful. They receive criticism and they immediately feel attacked or inadequate. This emotional reactivity is mental poison because it means you're not in control of your own mind. You're like a puppet being controlled by external circumstances. Every situation, every person, every unexpected event has the power to derail your emotional state and destroy your focus. Your inner peace becomes hostage to forces beyond your control. When you're emotionally reactive, you make decisions based on temporary feelings rather than long-term strategy. You say things you regret when you're angry. You avoid opportunities when you're afraid. You give up on goals when you're discouraged. You make impulsive choices when you're excited. Your entire life becomes a series of emotional reactions rather than conscious choices. The second weakness is catastrophic thinking. Most people's minds automatically jump to the worst-case scenario in any situation. They get laid off from their job and they immediately imagine themselves homeless and destitute. They get rejected by someone they're attracted to and they convince themselves they'll never find love. They fail at something important and they conclude their failures as human beings. They face a health scare and they assume they're dying. They encounter financial difficulties and they envision complete ruin. This pattern of thinking creates a mental environment where fear dominates everything. Instead of seeing challenges as opportunities to grow stronger, they see them as threats to their survival. Instead of approaching problems with confidence and creativity, they approach them with anxiety and desperation. Instead of focusing on solutions, they become obsessed with everything that could go wrong. Catastrophic thinking is particularly destructive because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you expect the worst, you unconsciously behave in ways that make the worst more likely. When you're convinced you'll fail, you don't put in maximum effort. When you're certain people will reject you, you act in ways that push them away. When you're sure something won't work, you don't fully commit to making it work. The third weakness is victim mentality. Most people blame their circumstances, their upbringing, their genetics, their bad luck, their toxic relationships, their unsupportive families, their discriminatory society, their unfair bosses, their economic disadvantages, or other people for their problems. They see themselves as powerless victims of forces beyond their control. This mentality is mental cancer because it destroys your sense of agency and responsibility. When you think like a victim, you stop looking for solutions and start looking for excuses. You stop taking action and start making complaints. You stop focusing on what you can control and start obsessing about what you can't control. You stop growing stronger and start growing weaker. Every setback confirms your belief that you're powerless, creating a downward spiral that's almost impossible to escape. Victim mentality is seductive because it provides immediate psychological relief. It's easier to blame external factors than to take responsibility for changing your situation. It's more comfortable to see yourself as powerless than to acknowledge that your choices have consequences. It's less threatening to believe that success is determined by luck than to admit that it's determined by effort and skill. But this temporary psychological relief comes at a devastating long-term cost. When you see yourself as a victim, you give away your power to create the life you want. You become dependent on external circumstances changing instead of taking responsibility for changing yourself. You wait for someone else to rescue you instead of developing the strength to rescue yourself. The fourth weakness is comfort addiction. Most people avoid discomfort at all costs. They stay in jobs they hate because leaving feels scary and uncertain. They avoid difficult conversations because confrontation feels uncomfortable and risky. They stick with familiar routines because change feels threatening and demanding. They refuse to challenge themselves because growth requires effort and temporary pain. They choose the known misery over the unknown possibility. They prefer the familiar prison to the uncertain freedom. They select the comfortable failure over the uncomfortable success. They pick the easy wrong over the difficult right. But here's what they don't understand. Comfort is the enemy of mental strength. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you're making your mind weaker. Every time you avoid a challenge, you're training yourself to be fragile. Every time you seek the easy path, you're programming yourself for failure when life gets hard. Every time you retreat to your comfort zone, you're shrinking your capacity to handle bigger challenges. Comfort addiction creates a vicious cycle where your tolerance for discomfort decreases over time. The more you avoid difficulty, the more difficult things become. The more you seek comfort, the more uncomfortable you become when comfort isn't available. The more you shelter yourself from challenge, the more challenging simple problems become. The fifth weakness is external validation dependency. Most people need constant approval, praise, recognition, and validation from others to feel good about themselves. Their self-worth depends entirely on what other people think of them. Their confidence rises and falls are based on external feedback. Their sense of value is determined by social media likes, professional recognition, romantic approval, family acceptance, peer admiration, and societal status. This makes them incredibly vulnerable because they've given control of their mental state to other people. One negative comment can destroy their confidence for days or weeks. One criticism can make them question everything they're doing. One rejection can convince them they're not good enough. One person's disapproval can derail their entire emotional stability. External validation dependency turns you into an approval-seeking machine rather than a goal-achieving machine. You make decisions based on what will make others happy rather than what will help you grow. You pursue paths that others expect rather than paths that align with your values and vision. You become so focused on managing other people's opinions that you lose touch with your own authentic desires and capabilities. The sixth weakness is perfectionist paralysis. Many people refuse to take action unless they can guarantee perfect results. They won't start a business unless they have a perfect plan. They won't pursue a relationship unless they're certain it will work out. They won't attempt a challenge unless they know they'll succeed. They won't share their ideas unless they're completely refined. They won't take risks unless they can eliminate all possibility of failure. This perfectionist thinking creates chronic procrastination and missed opportunities. While perfectionists are waiting for perfect conditions, perfect timing, perfect preparation, and perfect guarantees, opportunities pass them by. While they're obsessing over making everything perfect, others are taking action and learning from results. Perfectionism is often disguised as high standards, but it's actually a form of fear-based thinking. The perfectionist isn't trying to achieve excellence. They are trying to avoid criticism, failure, and rejection. They use the pursuit of perfection as an excuse to avoid the vulnerability that comes with putting themselves and their work into the world. The seventh weakness is learned helplessness. This occurs when people experience repeated setbacks and conclude that their actions don't matter. They've tried to change their situation multiple times and failed, so they stop trying altogether. They've attempted to achieve their goals and fallen short, so they lower their expectations. They've faced rejection and criticism, so they stop putting themselves out there. Learned helplessness is particularly insidious because it often develops gradually. Each failure chips away at their confidence. Each setback reduces their willingness to take risks. Each disappointment makes them more cautious and less ambitious. Eventually, they stop believing that their efforts can create meaningful change in their lives. This mental pattern is devastating because it becomes self-perpetuating. When you believe your actions don't matter, you stop taking effective action. When you stop taking effective action, your results confirm your belief that you're helpless. This creates a cycle of diminishing effort and diminishing results that can persist for years or even decades. The eighth weakness is instant gratification seeking. Most people want immediate results and become frustrated when progress is slower than expected. They start a fitness program and quit when they don't see results in 2 weeks. They begin learning a new skill and abandon it when they don't achieve competence quickly. They pursue a goal and give up when they encounter initial obstacles or delays. This need for instant gratification makes people vulnerable to quitting before they can experience the compound benefits of sustained effort. They never develop the patience and persistence required for significant achievement. They never experience the satisfaction of working through difficulties to achieve meaningful results. The instant gratification mindset also makes people susceptible to get-rich-quick schemes, miracle solutions, and easy-fix promises. They're always looking for shortcuts that will allow them to bypass the effort and time required for real development. They become easy targets for anyone promising fast results with minimal effort. These 8 weaknesses create a mind that's vulnerable to attack from every direction. It's like having a fortress with walls made of paper, gates made of cardboard, and guards who run away at the first sign of trouble. The moment any real pressure is applied, everything collapses. But the good news is revolutionary. Every one of these weaknesses can be transformed into a strength. Every vulnerability can become an impenetrable defense. Every mental liability can become a psychological asset. And that transformation starts with understanding the science of mental resilience and the systematic process of building unbreakable mental armor. The people who achieve extraordinary results haven't eliminated these challenges from their lives. They've developed mental systems that make them immune to these psychological vulnerabilities. They've built minds that cannot be broken by emotional turbulence, catastrophic thinking, victim mentality, comfort addiction, validation dependency, perfectionist paralysis, learned helplessness, or instant gratification seeking. They've created psychological antibodies that protect them from the mental viruses that infect most people. They've developed mental immune systems that actually get stronger when exposed to psychological challenges. They've built minds that use adversity as fuel for growth rather than allowing adversity to fuel defeat. Chapter 3. The Neuroscience of Unbreakable Minds. Your brain is not fixed. This is the most important thing you need to understand about building mental armor. For decades, scientists believed that adult brains couldn't change, that neural pathways were permanent, that you were stuck with whatever mental patterns you developed early in life. This was completely wrong, and understanding why changes everything about what's possible for your mental strength. The truth is revolutionary. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on your thoughts, actions, and experiences. This process is called neuroplasticity, and it's the foundation of building an unbreakable mind. Every time you think a thought, you strengthen certain neural pathways. Every time you respond to a situation in a particular way, you make that response more automatic in the future. Every time you practice a mental skill, you literally change the physical structure of your brain. This means that mental weakness isn't permanent, and mental strength isn't genetic. They're both the result of neural patterns that have been reinforced over time through repetition and practice. And just like you can build physical muscle through progressive training, you can build mental muscle through deliberate neuroplasticity-based exercises. The implications are staggering. If your brain is constantly changing based on how you use it, then you have complete control over your mental strength, emotional resilience, stress tolerance, confidence levels, and psychological toughness. You're not a victim of your genetics, your upbringing, your past experiences, or your current circumstances. You're the architect of your own mind. But most people don't understand this, so they accidentally train their brains for weakness instead of strength. They repeatedly think negative thoughts, strengthening neural pathways that create pessimism and fear. They consistently respond to challenges with anxiety and avoidance, making those responses more automatic. They practice victim thinking, reinforcing neural patterns that make them feel powerless and helpless. The key is understanding which neural patterns create mental strength and which ones create mental weakness. Then deliberately practicing the patterns that serve you while eliminating the patterns that sabotage you. When you face a challenge, your brain has two primary response systems it can activate: the fear system or the growth system. These systems are mutually exclusive. When one is active, the other is suppressed. Your mental strength depends on training your brain to default to the growth system instead of the fear system. The fear system is designed for survival in dangerous situations. When it's activated, your brain focuses on avoiding threats, minimizing risks, seeking safety, conserving energy, and escaping danger. This system served our ancestors well when they faced physical dangers like predators, natural disasters, and hostile tribes. But in modern life, it often works against us because most of our challenges aren't actually life-threatening. When the fear system dominates your thinking, you become risk-averse, pessimistic, reactive, defensive, and focused on avoiding failure rather than achieving success. You see challenges as threats instead of opportunities. You focus on what could go wrong instead of what could go right. You seek comfort and familiarity instead of growth and expansion. You make decisions based on avoiding pain rather than pursuing pleasure. The fear system also triggers a cascade of stress hormones that impair higher-level thinking functions. When you're in fear mode, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for strategic thinking, creative problem-solving, and emotional regulation, goes offline. Your amygdala, the primitive fear center, takes control and makes decisions based on fight, flight, or freeze responses. This is why people make terrible decisions when they're scared, angry, or overwhelmed. Their higher brain functions are literally suppressed in favor of primitive survival responses. They can't think clearly, solve problems creatively, or regulate their emotions effectively because their fear system has hijacked their neural resources. The growth system, on the other hand, is designed for adaptation, learning, and improvement. When it's activated, your brain focuses on exploring possibilities, solving problems, learning from experience, building capabilities, and expanding your comfort zone. You see challenges as opportunities to become stronger. You approach problems with curiosity instead of anxiety. You embrace discomfort as a sign that you're growing. When the growth system is active, your prefrontal cortex is fully online and operating at peak capacity. You can think strategically, solve problems creatively, regulate your emotions effectively, and make decisions based on long-term vision rather than short-term impulses. You can access your full cognitive resources and apply them to whatever challenge you're facing. The growth system also triggers the release of neurochemicals that enhance learning, memory, and performance. When you're in growth mode, your brain produces increased levels of dopamine, which enhances motivation and focus. Serotonin, which stabilizes mood and promotes confidence, and BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which literally grows new neural connections and enhances learning capacity. The difference between people with unbreakable minds and those with fragile minds is simple. They've trained their brains to default to the growth system instead of the fear system. They've rewired their neural patterns to see strength where others see weakness, opportunity where others see threat, and growth where others see danger. This rewiring doesn't happen overnight, but it's completely achievable through specific training techniques based on neuroplasticity principles. The most powerful of these techniques is called cognitive reconditioning, and it's based on the principle that you can literally reprogram your brain by changing your thought patterns. Every thought you think creates a neural pathway. The first time you think a particular thought, it creates a weak neural connection. But every time you repeat that thought, the connection gets stronger. Think the same thought repeatedly and it becomes an automatic neural pathway that fires without conscious effort. This is how both mental strength and mental weakness develop through repetition and reinforcement. If you consistently think thoughts like "I can't handle this, this is too difficult. I'm not good enough. I always fail. People don't like me," or "I'm unlucky," you're strengthening neural pathways that create mental weakness, learned helplessness, and psychological fragility. But if you consistently think thoughts like, "I can figure this out. This challenge will make me stronger. I have what it takes to succeed. I learn from every setback. I attract the right people," or "I create my own opportunities," you're strengthening neural pathways that create mental strength, personal empowerment, and psychological resilience. The process is simple in concept, but requires discipline in practice. You must become aware of your automatic thought patterns and deliberately replace weak thoughts with strong ones. You must catch yourself when you're thinking like a victim and consciously shift to thinking like a warrior. You must monitor your internal dialogue and ensure it's programming you for strength rather than weakness. This isn't positive thinking or self-help nonsense. This is applied neuroscience. You're literally changing the physical structure of your brain to create mental patterns that serve you instead of sabotage you. Brain imaging studies show that people who practice cognitive reconditioning develop measurable changes in brain structure within weeks of consistent practice. But cognitive reconditioning is just the beginning. To build truly unbreakable mental armor, you need to combine it with other scientifically proven techniques that target different aspects of neural rewiring. Visualization is another powerful neuroplasticity tool. When you vividly imagine yourself handling challenges successfully, your brain creates neural patterns as if you're actually experiencing the situation. This is why elite athletes spend hours mentally rehearsing their performance. They're literally programming their brains for success before the actual event occurs. The key to effective visualization is making it as detailed and realistic as possible. You don't just imagine the successful outcome. You imagine the entire process, including the challenges you'll face and how you'll overcome them. You visualize feeling the stress response activate and then channeling it into enhanced performance. You mentally rehearse, staying calm, focused, and effective under pressure. Stress inoculation is another crucial neuroplasticity technique. Just like a vaccine works by exposing you to a weakened version of a pathogen to build immunity, stress inoculation works by exposing you to controlled challenges to build psychological immunity. Each time you voluntarily face a difficult situation and handle it successfully, you build neural patterns that increase your confidence and stress tolerance. The key is making the challenges progressive and manageable. You start with small stressors that activate your stress response without overwhelming your capacity to cope. As you build competence at handling smaller challenges, you gradually increase the difficulty level. This progressive approach builds stress immunity without creating traumatic experiences that could undermine your confidence. Mindfulness meditation is another powerful tool for brain rewiring. Regular meditation practice literally changes brain structure, increasing gray matter in areas associated with emotional regulation, attention control, and stress resilience, while decreasing activity in areas associated with anxiety and reactivity. The specific type of meditation matters less than the consistency of practice. Whether you practice focused attention meditation, open awareness meditation, loving kindness meditation, or body scan meditation, the key is regular practice that trains your brain to observe thoughts and emotions without being controlled by them. Physical exercise is also crucial for brain rewiring because it triggers the release of BDNF and other neurochemicals that enhance neuroplasticity. Regular cardiovascular exercise, strength training, and complex movement patterns all contribute to brain health and mental resilience. Exercise also provides natural stress inoculation by challenging your physical systems in controlled ways. Sleep optimization is essential because most brain rewiring occurs during sleep. Your brain consolidates new neural patterns, eliminates cellular waste products, and integrates new learning during deep sleep stages. Poor sleep quality can undermine all your efforts to build mental strength by preventing proper neural consolidation. Nutrition also plays a crucial role in brain rewiring. Your brain needs specific nutrients to build new neural connections and maintain optimal function. Omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, B vitamins, magnesium, and protein are particularly important for neuroplasticity and mental resilience. Social connections influence brain structure as well. Positive, supportive relationships trigger the release of oxytocin and other neurochemicals that enhance neuroplasticity and stress resilience. Isolation and toxic relationships, on the other hand, increase stress hormones that impair brain function and mental health. The most powerful approach combines all these techniques into a comprehensive brain training program. You practice cognitive reconditioning to reprogram your thought patterns. You use visualization to mentally rehearse success scenarios. You engage in progressive stress inoculation to build psychological immunity. You meditate regularly to enhance emotional regulation. You exercise consistently to optimize brain chemistry. You prioritize sleep to consolidate neural changes. You eat foods that support brain health. You cultivate positive relationships that enhance resilience. This multifaceted approach creates compound effects that accelerate brain rewiring and mental armor development. Each technique reinforces and amplifies the others, creating exponential rather than linear improvement in mental strength. The timeline for significant brain changes varies depending on the intensity and consistency of your practice, but research shows that measurable changes can occur within 2 to 4 weeks of consistent training. Significant structural changes typically occur within 8 to 12 weeks. Life-changing transformations usually require 6 to 12 months of dedicated practice. The key is understanding that you're not just trying to feel better or think more positively. You're literally rebuilding your brain for unbreakable mental strength. You're creating new neural architecture that will serve you for the rest of your life. You're developing psychological capabilities that will compound over time and create exponential improvements in your resilience, confidence, and performance. Chapter 4. The 4 Pillars of Mental Armor. Mental armor isn't built from a single technique or strategy. It's constructed from 4 distinct but interconnected pillars, each targeting a different aspect of mental resilience. Master all 4 and your mind becomes virtually unbreakable. Neglect any one of them and you create a vulnerability that can be exploited when pressure increases. Think of these pillars as the 4 walls of an impenetrable fortress. Each wall must be equally strong or enemies will attack through the weakest point. Each pillar must be developed systematically or your mental armor will have critical gaps that leave you exposed when you need protection most. The 4 pillars are emotional regulation, cognitive flexibility, stress immunity, and identity armor. Together, they create a comprehensive defense system that protects you from every form of psychological attack while simultaneously making you stronger through exposure to challenge. The first pillar, emotional regulation. This is your ability to maintain control over your emotional responses regardless of external circumstances. Most people are emotional slaves. They feel whatever their environment tells them to feel. But with proper emotional regulation, you become the master of your internal state. Emotional regulation doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It means having conscious control over how you process and express emotions. When someone criticizes you, you don't automatically feel hurt or defensive. When you face a setback, you don't automatically feel discouraged or defeated. When uncertainty arises, you don't automatically feel anxious or overwhelmed. Instead, you pause. You observe the emotion without being controlled by it. You choose how to respond based on your goals and values, not on your immediate emotional impulses. This creates an unshakable inner stability that external forces cannot disrupt. The foundation of emotional regulation is understanding that emotions are information, not instructions. When you feel angry, that emotion is giving you information. Perhaps that a boundary has been crossed or an injustice has occurred. But the emotion itself is not telling you that you must react with aggression or retaliation. When you feel fear, that emotion is giving you information. Perhaps that you're entering unfamiliar territory or facing a significant challenge. But the emotion itself is not telling you that you must avoid the situation or retreat to safety. Most people make the mistake of treating emotions as commands they must obey. They feel angry, so they lash out. They feel afraid, so they avoid taking action. They feel sad, so they withdraw from opportunities. They feel excited, so they make impulsive decisions. This emotional reactivity gives control of their lives to external circumstances. True emotional regulation starts with creating space between feeling and response. This space is where your power lives. In this space, you can observe the emotion, understand its message, and choose your response based on wisdom rather than impulse. Advanced emotional regulation goes beyond just managing negative emotions. It includes the ability to generate positive emotional states at will. You can create confidence when you need to perform. You can access calm when you need to think clearly. You can generate enthusiasm when you need motivation. You can produce determination when you need persistence. This emotional mastery makes you incredibly powerful because your performance is no longer dependent on external circumstances or random emotional fluctuations. You can access the emotional states that support peak performance regardless of what's happening around you. The highest level of emotional regulation is emotional alchemy, the ability to transform negative emotions into positive ones. Instead of being weakened by anger, you transform it into determination. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, you transform it into excitement. Instead of being crushed by disappointment, you transform it into motivation for improvement. The second pillar, cognitive flexibility. This is your ability to adapt your thinking patterns based on changing circumstances. Most people have rigid mental models that break when reality doesn't match their expectations. But with cognitive flexibility, You can adjust your perspective to find opportunity in any situation. Cognitive flexibility means seeing multiple possibilities where others see only problems. It means finding creative solutions when conventional approaches fail. It means remaining optimistic about outcomes while being realistic about challenges. This mental agility allows you to navigate uncertainty with confidence instead of fear. The foundation of cognitive flexibility is perspective taking. The ability to look at any situation from multiple angles to find the most useful viewpoint. When you face a challenge, instead of automatically focusing on what's wrong or what you can't control, you train yourself to also look for what's right and what you can influence. Perspective taking doesn't mean ignoring problems or pretending difficulties don't exist. It means expanding your mental toolkit so you can choose the perspective that best serves your goals. Sometimes the most useful perspective focuses on solutions rather than problems. Sometimes it focuses on long-term benefits rather than short-term costs. Sometimes it focuses on what you can learn rather than what you can lose. Advanced cognitive flexibility includes assumption questioning, regularly examining your beliefs and mental models to ensure they're still serving you. What if that impossible goal is actually achievable with a different approach? What if that failed strategy would work in different circumstances? What if that unrealistic vision is exactly what's needed to create breakthrough results? The highest level of cognitive flexibility is paradoxical thinking. The ability to hold apparently contradictory ideas simultaneously and extract value from both. You can be confident but humble, focused but flexible, persistent but adaptive, optimistic but realistic. This allows you to navigate complex situations that would confuse people who think in binary terms. The third pillar, stress immunity. This is your ability to perform at peak levels under high-pressure conditions. Most people's performance degrades when stress increases, but those with stress immunity actually perform better when the stakes are higher. Stress immunity is developed through controlled exposure to challenging situations. Just like a vaccine works by exposing you to a weakened version of a disease to build immunity, stress immunity is built by deliberately putting yourself in pressure situations to build mental calluses. The foundation of stress immunity is stress reframing, changing your interpretation of stress symptoms from threatening to empowering. Instead of seeing increased heart rate as a sign of anxiety, you see it as your body preparing for action. Instead of interpreting nervous energy as fear, you see it as excitement for the challenge ahead. This reframe is based on cutting-edge research showing that stress is only harmful when you believe it's harmful. When you view stress as helpful and empowering, it actually enhances your performance and improves your health. Your body responds to your interpretation, not just to the stressor itself. Advanced stress immunity includes stress utilization, the ability to channel stress energy into enhanced performance. Instead of trying to eliminate stress, you learn to use it as fuel for heightened focus, increased energy, and improved capabilities. You become someone who gets excited about high-pressure situations because you know they bring out your best performance. The highest level of stress immunity is stress seeking, actively pursuing challenging situations because you understand they make you stronger. You no longer avoid pressure. You seek it out as an opportunity to demonstrate your capabilities and continue building your stress tolerance. The fourth pillar, identity armor. This is having an unshakable sense of self that doesn't depend on external validation or circumstances. Most people's self-concept is fragile because it's based on temporary things like achievements, relationships, or social status. But identity armor is built on permanent foundations that can't be taken away. When you have identity armor, criticism doesn't threaten your self-worth because you know who you are independent of what others think. Failure doesn't define you because your identity isn't based on your outcomes. Rejection doesn't devastate you because your value isn't determined by other people's approval. The foundation of identity armor is principle-based identity. Defining yourself by your values and principles rather than by your achievements or circumstances. You become someone who acts with integrity regardless of consequences. Someone who tells the truth regardless of convenience. Someone who treats others with respect regardless of their status. When your identity is based on principles, external circumstances cannot threaten your sense of self. You might lose money, but you cannot lose your integrity. You might face setbacks, but you can't lose your character. You might be criticized, but you cannot lose your values. Advanced identity armor includes capability-based identity, seeing yourself as someone who can develop whatever skills are needed to achieve your goals. You become someone who figures things out, someone who finds solutions, someone who adapts and overcomes. This makes you incredibly resilient because you never see yourself as permanently stuck or helpless. The highest level of identity armor is legacy-based identity. Seeing yourself as someone who is building something that will last beyond your lifetime. You make decisions based on long-term impact rather than short-term convenience. This gives you incredible strength during temporary setbacks because you're playing a longer game. How the 4 pillars work together. These 4 pillars don't work in isolation. They reinforce and strengthen each other. Emotional regulation supports cognitive flexibility by keeping you calm enough to think clearly. Cognitive flexibility enhances stress immunity by helping you reframe challenges as opportunities. Stress immunity strengthens identity armor by proving you can handle whatever life throws at you. Identity armor stabilizes emotional regulation by giving you an unshakable foundation. When all 4 pillars are fully developed, they create a synergistic effect that makes you far stronger than the sum of the individual components. You become someone who remains emotionally stable under pressure, thinks clearly when others panic, performs better when stakes are higher, and maintains unshakable confidence regardless of circumstances. This is the power of complete mental armor. Not just protection from psychological attacks, but transformation into someone who gets stronger through every challenge they face. Chapter 5. Emotional Regulation. Mastering your internal state. Your emotions are not random events that happen to you. They're responses that you can learn to control with surgical precision. The difference between emotional masters and emotional slaves is understanding that emotions are information, not instructions. They provide valuable data about your internal state and external circumstances, but they don't get to dictate your behavior or determine your responses. When you feel angry, that emotion is giving you information. Perhaps that a boundary has been crossed, an injustice has occurred, or someone has disrespected you. But the emotion itself is not telling you that you must react with aggression, retaliation, or verbal attack. When you feel fear, that emotion is giving you information. Perhaps that you're entering unfamiliar territory, facing a significant challenge, or encountering potential danger. But the emotion itself is not telling you that you must avoid the situation, retreat to safety, or abandon your goals. When you feel sad, that emotion is giving you information. Perhaps that you've experienced a loss, disappointed yourself or others, or encountered an outcome different from what you hoped. But the emotion itself is not telling you that you must withdraw from opportunities, isolate yourself from others, or give up on your aspirations. Most people make the fundamental mistake of treating emotions as commands they must obey without question. They feel angry, so they lash out at whoever is nearby. They feel afraid, so they avoid taking necessary action. They feel sad, so they withdraw from social connections and opportunities. They feel excited, so they make impulsive decisions without considering consequences. They feel anxious, so they procrastinate on important tasks. They feel guilty, so they sabotage their own success. This emotional reactivity gives control of their lives to external circumstances and internal fluctuations they don't understand. Their behavior becomes unpredictable, their decisions become inconsistent, and their results become mediocre because they're not acting from conscious choice but from unconscious emotional reaction. True emotional regulation starts with creating space between feeling and response. This space is where your power lives. In this space, you can observe the emotion without being overwhelmed by it. Understand its message without being controlled by it and choose your response based on wisdom, strategy, and long-term goals rather than immediate impulse and temporary feeling. The stop method, creating space between stimulus and response. The first technique for emotional regulation is called the SP method. When you notice an intense emotion arising, whether it's anger, fear, sadness, excitement, anxiety, or any other strong feeling, you immediately stop what you're doing, take a deep breath, and create a pause before responding. This interrupts the automatic emotional reaction and gives you access to conscious choice. The acronym STOP stands for S. Stop. Immediately cease whatever activity you're engaged in. Don't speak. Don't act. Don't make decisions. Just stop. T. Take a breath. Engage in deep conscious breathing to activate your parasympathetic nervous system and create physiological calm. O. Observe. Notice what you're feeling, where you feel it in your body, what triggered it, and what story your mind is telling you about the situation. P. Proceed. Choose your response based on your values, goals, and long-term best interests rather than your immediate emotional impulse. During this pause, you observe the emotion without judgment or resistance. You notice where you feel it in your body, perhaps tension in your shoulders when you're stressed, a knot in your stomach when you're anxious, heat in your face when you're angry, or heaviness in your chest when you're sad. You identify what triggered the emotional response. Perhaps a specific comment someone made, an unexpected event that occurred, a memory that was activated, or a fear that was stimulated. You consider what information the emotion might be providing. Is this anger telling you that a boundary needs to be established? Is this fear warning you about a genuine risk that needs to be assessed? Is this sadness indicating that something important to you has been lost and needs to be grieved? Is this excitement revealing an opportunity that deserves consideration? But you don't automatically act on the emotion. You treat it like weather. Something you're aware of and take into account, but not something that controls your behavior or determines your direction. You might acknowledge that you're feeling angry about an unfair situation, but you choose to respond with strategic communication rather than emotional reaction. You might recognize that you're feeling afraid about an uncertain outcome, but you choose to proceed with careful planning rather than anxious avoidance. Cognitive reframing, changing your interpretation. The second technique is cognitive reframing, consciously choosing how to interpret emotional triggers and challenging situations. When someone criticizes your work, instead of automatically interpreting it as a personal attack on your worth and competence, you can reframe it as feedback that might help you improve your skills and results. When you face a significant setback, instead of automatically interpreting it as evidence that you're failing and should give up, you can reframe it as valuable data about what doesn't work and guidance for adjusting your approach. When you encounter rejection, instead of automatically interpreting it as proof that you're not good enough and never will be, you can reframe it as redirection toward better opportunities that are more aligned with your strengths and goals. When you experience financial pressure, instead of automatically interpreting it as evidence that you're irresponsible and doomed to struggle, you can reframe it as motivation to develop better money management skills and create additional income streams. Reframing doesn't mean lying to yourself, denying reality, or pretending negative things are positive. It means choosing interpretations that empower you rather than weaken you, that motivate action rather than paralysis, that promote learning rather than defensiveness. It means looking for the aspect of any situation that can make you stronger, smarter, more capable, or more resilient. The key to effective reframing is asking better questions when challenging situations arise. Instead of asking "Why does this always happen to me?" ask "What can I learn from this experience?" Instead of asking "Why am I so unlucky?" ask "How can I use this situation to become stronger?" Instead of asking "What's wrong with me?" ask "What skills do I need to develop to handle this better in the future?" These questions direct your brain towards solutions, opportunities, and growth rather than toward problems, limitations, and victimhood. They activate your problem-solving capabilities rather than your self-pity mechanisms. They engage your creativity rather than your catastrophic thinking patterns. Emotional granularity. Precision in emotional awareness. The third technique is emotional granularity. Developing a sophisticated vocabulary and precise awareness of your emotional experiences. Most people have a very limited emotional vocabulary. They're either good or bad, happy or sad, confident or scared, motivated or lazy. But emotions are far more nuanced and complex than this. And the more precisely you can identify what you're feeling, the more control you have over your emotional responses. Instead of just feeling bad, you might recognize that you're feeling disappointed about a specific outcome, frustrated with a particular person's behavior, concerned about potential consequences, and overwhelmed by the number of decisions you need to make. This specificity allows you to address each emotional component appropriately rather than being overwhelmed by a vague sense of negativity. Instead of just feeling stressed, you might identify that you're feeling pressured by an approaching deadline, anxious about a presentation you need to give, excited about a new opportunity that's available, and uncertain about which direction to take your career. This granularity helps you respond to each element strategically rather than being paralyzed by general stress. Emotional granularity requires expanding your emotional vocabulary beyond basic terms. You might feel annoyed rather than angry, curious rather than confused, determined rather than motivated, cautious rather than afraid, or energized rather than excited. The more precisely you can name your emotional experience, the more options you have for responding appropriately. Advanced emotional granularity includes recognizing emotional blends, situations where you're experiencing multiple emotions simultaneously. You might feel excited about a new opportunity and anxious about whether you can succeed at it. You might feel grateful for someone's help and frustrated that you needed help in the first place. You might feel proud of your accomplishments and concerned about whether you can maintain your performance level. Understanding these emotional blends prevents you from being confused or overwhelmed by complex feelings. Instead of trying to figure out whether you feel good or bad about a situation, you can acknowledge the full spectrum of your emotional response and make decisions that honor all aspects of your experience. Physiological regulation using your body to influence your mind. The fourth technique is physiological regulation using your physical state to influence your emotional state. Your emotional state is directly connected to your physical state. And you can use this connection to create the emotional conditions that support peak performance and clear thinking. When you notice anxiety arising, you can immediately shift to deep, slow breathing to activate your parasympathetic nervous system and create a sense of calm and control. When you notice energy dropping due to discouragement or depression, you can change your posture, increase your movement, and engage in activities that generate positive neurochemicals like endorphins, dopamine, and serotonin. When you notice tension building from stress or overwhelm, you can use progressive muscle relaxation techniques to release physical holding patterns that reinforce emotional patterns. When you notice mental fog from confusion or uncertainty, you can engage in cardiovascular exercise to increase blood flow to your brain and enhance cognitive function. Your breathing pattern has immediate and direct effects on your emotional state. Short, shallow, rapid breathing activates your sympathetic nervous system and creates feelings of anxiety, urgency, and stress. Long, deep, slow breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system and creates feelings of calm, control, and relaxation. Your posture also influences your emotional state through what researchers call embodied cognition. Standing or sitting with your chest open, shoulders back and head up creates feelings of confidence, power, and optimism. Slouching with your chest collapsed, shoulders forward, and head down creates feelings of defeat, weakness, and pessimism. Your facial expressions affect your emotional state through feedback loops between your facial muscles and your brain. Smiling even when you don't feel happy triggers the release of mood-elevating neurochemicals. Frowning, scowling, or maintaining tense facial expressions reinforces negative emotional states. Your movement patterns influence your emotional state through their effects on neurochemistry and circulation. Vigorous physical activity releases endorphins, increases dopamine and serotonin levels, and improves blood flow to areas of the brain responsible for mood regulation. Slow, Gentle movement like yoga or tai chi activates the relaxation response and promotes emotional balance. Emotional inoculation, building immunity through controlled exposure. The fifth technique is emotional inoculation. Deliberately exposing yourself to controlled emotional challenges to build emotional resilience and immunity. Just like stress immunity, you can build emotional immunity by gradually exposing yourself to situations that activate emotional responses while maintaining your equilibrium and effectiveness. This might mean having difficult conversations you've been avoiding to build immunity to conflict and confrontation. It might mean putting yourself in situations where you might face criticism or rejection to build immunity to social judgment. It might mean taking on projects that stretch your comfort zone to build immunity to uncertainty and failure. It might mean practicing public speaking to build immunity to performance anxiety. It might mean negotiating for better terms in your personal and professional relationships to build immunity to potential conflict. It might mean sharing your ideas and creations publicly to build immunity to criticism and judgment. Each time you face an emotional challenge and maintain your emotional regulation, you build emotional muscle and expand your emotional comfort zone. You prove to yourself that you can handle difficult feelings without being overwhelmed by them. You develop confidence in your ability to navigate emotional turbulence while remaining focused on your goals and values. The key to effective emotional inoculation is making the challenges progressive and manageable. You start with emotional situations that activate your responses without overwhelming your capacity to cope. As you build competence at handling smaller emotional challenges, you gradually increase the difficulty level. This progressive approach builds emotional immunity without creating traumatic experiences that could undermine your confidence. Emotional alchemy, transforming negative emotions into positive ones. The sixth and most advanced technique is emotional alchemy. The ability to transform negative emotions into positive ones through conscious reinterpretation and energy redirection. Instead of being weakened by difficult emotions, you learn to transform them into fuel for enhanced performance and accelerated growth. Anger can be alchemically transformed into determination and focused energy for achieving your goals. Instead of letting anger make you reactive and destructive, you channel that emotional intensity into disciplined action toward meaningful objectives. You use the energy that anger provides while directing it constructively rather than destructively. Fear can be alchemically transformed into excitement and heightened awareness. Instead of letting fear paralyze you or make you avoid opportunities, you recognize that fear and excitement create identical physiological responses. Increased heart rate, heightened alertness, enhanced energy. The only difference is your interpretation. By consciously reinterpreting fear as excitement, you transform a limiting emotion into an empowering one. Sadness can be alchemically transformed into gratitude and wisdom. Instead of letting sadness make you withdraw and isolate, you use it as an opportunity to appreciate what you've had, to connect more deeply with others who matter to you, and to gain perspective on what's truly important in life. Anxiety can be alchemically transformed into preparation and strategic thinking. Instead of letting anxiety make you avoid challenges or procrastinate on important tasks, you channel that emotional energy into thorough preparation, careful planning, and proactive problem solving. Frustration can be alchemically transformed into innovation and creative problem solving. Instead of letting frustration make you give up or settle for suboptimal solutions, you use it as motivation to find better approaches, develop new skills, or create innovative solutions to persistent problems. The key to emotional alchemy is recognizing that every emotion contains useful energy that can be redirected toward constructive purposes. No emotion is inherently negative or positive. It's how you interpret and channel the emotion that determines whether it serves you or sabotages you. Advanced emotional regulation, generating positive states at will. The ultimate goal of emotional regulation is not just managing negative emotions, but generating positive emotional states at will. This means being able to create confidence when you need to perform, access calm when you need to think clearly, generate enthusiasm when you need motivation, produce determination when you need persistence, and summon courage when you need to take risks. This advanced emotional regulation makes you incredibly powerful because your performance is no longer dependent on external circumstances, other people's behavior, or random emotional fluctuations. You can access the emotional states that support peak performance regardless of what's happening around you. Generating positive emotional states requires understanding the triggers and anchors that create those states naturally, then learning to activate those triggers consciously. Confidence might be triggered by remembering past successes, visualizing future achievements, adopting confident posture and breathing, or engaging in activities that demonstrate your competence. Calm might be triggered by deep breathing exercises, meditation practices, peaceful visualizations, or physical activities that promote relaxation. Enthusiasm might be triggered by connecting with your deeper purpose, visualizing the benefits of achieving your goals, or engaging with inspiring people and content. The key is developing a toolkit of reliable methods for accessing any emotional state you need when you need it. This transforms you from someone who hopes they'll feel the right way at the right time to someone who can create the optimal emotional conditions for success in any situation. When you master emotional regulation at this level, you become emotionally antifragile. Challenges that would overwhelm others actually make you stronger. Situations that would destabilize others become opportunities for you to demonstrate your emotional mastery. You develop an inner calm and stability that cannot be shaken by external storms while simultaneously maintaining access to the full spectrum of emotions that make life rich, meaningful, and powerful. Chapter 6. Cognitive Flexibility. The Art of Mental Adaptation. Your mind can be your greatest asset or your biggest limitation. And the difference comes down to one critical factor: flexibility. Rigid thinking patterns are mental traps that keep you stuck in outdated strategies, obsolete beliefs, and ineffective approaches long after they've stopped serving you. But cognitive flexibility turns your mind into a precision instrument that can adapt to any situation, find opportunity in any challenge, and create solutions where others see only problems. Most people think in binary terms that drastically limit their options and effectiveness. Something is either good or bad, right or wrong, possible or impossible, safe or dangerous, successful or failed. This black and white thinking might feel simpler and more certain, but it's actually a form of mental weakness that leaves you vulnerable when reality doesn't fit your predetermined categories. The world is complex, nuanced, and constantly changing. Success in any meaningful endeavor requires the ability to hold multiple perspectives simultaneously. To see opportunities where others see only obstacles, to find creative solutions when conventional approaches fail, and to adapt your strategies when circumstances change. This is the power of cognitive flexibility. The mental agility that separates those who thrive in uncertainty from those who are paralyzed by it. People with rigid thinking patterns become trapped by their own mental models. They have fixed beliefs about what's possible and what's not, what works and what doesn't, what they can do and what they can't. When reality contradicts these fixed beliefs, they either deny the reality or conclude that they're inadequate. They can't adapt because their mental frameworks won't allow them to see alternative possibilities. But people with cognitive flexibility understand that their mental models are tools, not truths. They hold their beliefs lightly, test them against results, and adjust them when evidence suggests a better approach. They see their thinking patterns as software that can be updated rather than hardware that can't be changed. This flexibility allows them to navigate uncertainty with confidence instead of fear. To find creative solutions when conventional approaches fail, to see opportunities that others miss, and to adapt their strategies when circumstances change. They understand that the map is not the territory, and they're always willing to update their maps when they discover new territory. The first aspect, perspective shifting. The foundation of cognitive flexibility is perspective shifting. The ability to deliberately look at any situation from multiple angles to find the most useful viewpoint. When you face a challenge, instead of automatically focusing on what's wrong, what you can't control, or what might go wrong, you train yourself to also look for what's right, what you can influence, and what opportunities might be hidden in the situation. Perspective shifting doesn't mean ignoring problems, denying difficulties, or pretending that challenges don't exist. It means expanding your mental toolkit so you can choose the perspective that best serves your goals and supports effective action. Sometimes the most useful perspective focuses on solutions rather than problems. Sometimes it focuses on long-term benefits rather than short-term costs. Sometimes it focuses on what you can learn rather than what you might lose. Consider a business failure from multiple perspectives. From one perspective, it's a devastating setback that proves you're not cut out for entrepreneurship. From another perspective, it's valuable education that cost money, but provided knowledge you couldn't get any other way. From a third perspective, it's a necessary step in your development that will make you stronger and more capable for your next venture. All three perspectives are valid, but they lead to completely different emotional responses and behavioral choices. The first perspective creates discouragement and withdrawal. The second perspective creates learning and skill development. The third perspective creates resilience and determination. The same objective facts can lead to completely different subjective experiences depending on which perspective you choose. Advanced perspective shifting includes temporal perspective changes. Looking at situations from different time horizons, a setback that seems devastating when viewed from a 1-week perspective might seem minor when viewed from a 1-year perspective and completely insignificant when viewed from a 10-year perspective. A criticism that feels crushing when viewed in isolation might seem constructive when viewed as part of a pattern of feedback designed to help you improve. A rejection that feels personal when viewed through the lens of your current emotional state might seem strategic when viewed through the lens of finding the right fit for your goals and values. The key to effective perspective shifting is asking different questions about the same situation. Instead of asking "Why did this happen to me?" ask "What can I learn from this experience?" Instead of asking "What's wrong with this situation?" ask "What opportunities does this situation create?" Instead of asking "How can I avoid this in the future?" ask "How can I use this to become stronger?" The second aspect, assumption questioning. Most of your mental limitations come from assumptions you've never examined. You assume certain things are impossible because you've never seen them done or because someone told you they couldn't be done. You assume certain approaches won't work because they failed in the past or in different circumstances. You assume certain goals are unrealistic because they seem too big or because other people have told you they're unrealistic. Cognitive flexibility requires regularly questioning your assumptions and testing them against current reality rather than past experience or other people's opinions. What if that impossible goal is actually achievable with a different approach, better tools, or changed circumstances? What if that failed strategy would work in a different context with different execution or at a different time? What if that unrealistic vision is exactly what's needed to create breakthrough results that wouldn't be possible with more realistic goals? Most assumptions are inherited rather than examined. You absorb beliefs from your family, your education, your culture, your peer group, and your media consumption without consciously evaluating whether those beliefs serve your goals or limit your potential. These inherited assumptions become invisible mental barriers that constrain your thinking and limit your possibilities. Effective assumption questioning involves systematically examining your beliefs about what's possible, what's required for success, what causes failure, what you're capable of, what other people will accept, and what the world will support. You ask yourself, where did this belief come from? What evidence supports it? What evidence contradicts it? What would I try if I didn't believe this? What opportunities am I missing because of this assumption? This process often reveals that many of your limiting beliefs are based on outdated information, limited experience, or other people's fears rather than objective reality. You discover that things you thought were impossible are actually just difficult. Things you thought were required are actually just preferred, and things you thought were permanent are actually just persistent. Advanced assumption questioning includes examining your assumptions about cause and effect relationships. You might assume that success requires certain credentials, connections, or advantages. You might assume that failure is caused by specific factors or indicates specific inadequacies. You might assume that certain outcomes are only possible under certain conditions. But many of these cause and effect assumptions are oversimplified or completely incorrect. Success can be achieved through multiple pathways. Failure can result from numerous factors, and outcomes can be influenced by variables you haven't considered. By questioning these assumptions, you discover new possibilities for achieving your goals and overcoming your challenges. The third aspect: pattern recognition and cross-domain transfer. Cognitive flexibility includes the ability to see connections and patterns that others miss. To take lessons from one domain and apply them to completely different areas, and to recognize when an old solution can solve a new problem or when a new approach is needed for an old challenge. This pattern recognition comes from actively seeking connections between seemingly unrelated concepts, experiences, and fields of knowledge. How might the strategies used by successful athletes apply to business challenges? How might the principles of martial arts apply to emotional regulation? How might the lessons from historical events apply to current decisions? How might the techniques used in one industry solve problems in a completely different industry? Many breakthrough innovations come from cross-domain transfer. Taking ideas, strategies, or technologies from one field and applying them to solve problems in another field. Velcro was invented by observing how bird seeds stick to animal fur. The design of airplane wings was inspired by bird flight. Many business strategies are adapted from military tactics or sports strategies. By actively looking for patterns and connections across different domains, you develop a much larger toolkit for solving problems and achieving goals. You're not limited to the conventional approaches used in your field or industry. You can draw upon insights and strategies from completely different areas of human knowledge and experience. Advanced pattern recognition includes recognizing meta-patterns, underlying principles that apply across multiple domains. The principle of leverage applies in physics, finance, business, and personal development. The principle of feedback loops applies in biology, psychology, technology, and relationships. The principle of compound growth applies in investing, learning, fitness, and skill development. When you understand these meta-patterns, you can apply them in any context where they're relevant. You can use leverage principles to amplify your efforts in any area. You can use feedback loop principles to create continuous improvement in any system. You can use compound growth principles to create exponential results in any endeavor. The fourth aspect: scenario planning and contingency thinking. Instead of assuming things will go according to plan, cognitively flexible people prepare for multiple possibilities and develop contingency strategies for different scenarios. They ask themselves, what if this approach doesn't work as expected? What if circumstances change in ways we haven't anticipated? What if unexpected opportunities arise that we hadn't considered? What if the obstacles are bigger than we estimated? This isn't pessimistic thinking or paranoid planning. It's strategic thinking that prepares you to adapt quickly when reality diverges from your expectations. By considering multiple scenarios in advance, you're prepared to pivot, adjust, or completely change direction when necessary. You have backup plans, alternative strategies, and contingency options ready to implement. Scenario planning prevents you from being blindsided by unexpected developments and reduces the emotional shock that comes with plan failures. When you've already considered the possibility that your initial approach might not work, you're mentally prepared to try alternative approaches without feeling like you failed or that your goal is impossible. Advanced scenario planning includes considering second-order and third-order effects, the consequences of consequences. If you take a particular action, what will happen? And then what will happen as a result of that, and what will happen as a result of that? This deeper thinking helps you anticipate unintended consequences and prepare for ripple effects that others don't see coming. It also includes considering positive scenarios that might exceed your expectations. What if this approach works better than anticipated? What if you achieve your goals faster than expected? What if opportunities arise that are bigger than what you originally planned? Being prepared for positive surprises allows you to capitalize on them instead of being overwhelmed by unexpected success. The fifth aspect, learning orientation and growth mindset. Rigid thinkers see setbacks as evidence that they should give up or that their approach was fundamentally wrong. They take failures personally and interpret them as reflections of their inadequacy or proof that their goals are unrealistic. They see challenges as threats to be avoided rather than opportunities to be embraced. Flexible thinkers see setbacks as valuable data that can inform better strategies and improved approaches. They ask, what worked? What didn't work? What can we do differently next time? What did we learn that we didn't know before? What assumptions were revealed to be incorrect? What new possibilities did this experience reveal? This learning orientation transforms every experience into useful information. Success teaches you what to repeat and how to scale effective strategies. Failure teaches you what to avoid or modify and reveals weaknesses in your approach. Unexpected outcomes teach you about factors you hadn't considered and assumptions you hadn't questioned. Everything becomes gristed for the mill of continuous improvement and strategic refinement. Instead of being discouraged by setbacks, you become energized by the opportunity to improve your approach. Instead of being paralyzed by uncertainty, you become excited by the possibility of discovering new strategies and capabilities. Advanced learning orientation includes meta-learning, learning how to learn more effectively. You don't just focus on learning specific skills or information. You also focus on improving your learning processes, developing better study methods, enhancing your memory and retention, and accelerating your skill acquisition. This meta-learning orientation makes you increasingly effective at adapting to new situations because you're not just accumulating knowledge and skills, you're improving your ability to acquire new knowledge and skills quickly when circumstances require it. The sixth aspect, comfort with paradox and nuance. The world is full of apparent contradictions that must be navigated rather than resolved. You must be confident but humble, focused but flexible, persistent but adaptive, optimistic but realistic, independent but collaborative, decisive but open-minded. Rigid thinkers get stuck trying to choose one side of these paradoxes. But flexible thinkers learn to hold both sides simultaneously. This comfort with paradox allows you to be internally consistent while externally adaptive. You can maintain core principles while adjusting tactical approaches. You can stay committed to long-term goals while remaining flexible about short-term methods. You can be firm in your values while being fluid in your strategies. It also allows you to navigate complex situations that don't have simple or clear answers. Many of life's most important decisions involve trade-offs between competing values, uncertain outcomes, and incomplete information. Flexible thinking helps you make good decisions in these ambiguous situations by considering multiple factors and holding space for complexity rather than forcing simplistic solutions. Advanced comfort with paradox includes embracing the paradox of control. Understanding that you gain more control by accepting what you can't control and focusing intensively on what you can control. You become more powerful by acknowledging your limitations and more effective by concentrating your efforts where they can make a difference. Developing cognitive flexibility through practice. Cognitive flexibility, like any mental skill, improves through deliberate practice. You must actively seek out perspectives that challenge your existing views. You must regularly question your assumptions and test them against evidence. You must consciously look for patterns and connections across different domains. You must deliberately plan for multiple scenarios and prepare for various possibilities. Most importantly, you must embrace uncertainty as a natural part of life rather than something to be feared or avoided. Uncertainty is where opportunities hide. It's where innovation happens. It's where breakthroughs occur. It's where the biggest rewards await those brave enough to venture into unknown territory. When you become comfortable with uncertainty, your mind becomes free to explore possibilities that others can't even see. You develop the mental agility to dance with change rather than being destroyed by it. You become someone who thrives in chaos while others are paralyzed by complexity. Chapter 7. Stress Immunity. Thriving under pressure. Most people see stress as the enemy, something to be avoided, minimized, or eliminated at all costs. This is a fundamental misunderstanding that keeps them weak, unprepared, and vulnerable to life's inevitable challenges. Stress is not the enemy. It's a training partner that makes you stronger when you know how to work with it properly. The difference between stress that breaks you and stress that builds you is simple. Preparation and perspective. When stress catches you off guard and you have no tools to handle it, it overwhelms your system and degrades your performance. But when you've trained for stress and you understand its mechanics, it becomes fuel that enhances your capabilities and unlocks higher levels of performance. Elite performers in every field. Navy SEALs, Olympic athletes, emergency room doctors, special forces operators, astronauts, professional pilots, crisis negotiators, trauma surgeons, and elite executives all share one characteristic. They perform better under pressure than in comfortable conditions. This isn't natural talent or genetic superiority. It's trained skill. They've deliberately exposed themselves to stress in controlled environments so they can thrive when it matters most. Consider what happens when the stakes are highest in any field. The best athletes set personal records during the most important competitions. The best soldiers perform their most heroic acts during the most dangerous missions. The best doctors make their most critical decisions during the most challenging emergencies. The best entrepreneurs create their biggest breakthroughs during the most difficult periods. This is the paradox of stress immunity. Those who have trained themselves to handle pressure don't just survive high-stress situations. They excel in them. They access levels of performance that are only available when stress is present. They use pressure as a catalyst for peak performance rather than allowing pressure to create peak anxiety. Understanding the true nature of stress. Stress immunity begins with understanding what stress actually is and why your body creates it. Stress is your body's adaptive response to demands that exceed your current resources or comfort level. When you face a challenge that requires more from you than you're currently giving, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, or social, your nervous system activates to provide additional energy, focus, and capability. The problem is, most people have been conditioned to interpret this activation as dangerous rather than empowering. They feel their heart rate increase and assume something is wrong. They notice their breathing change and think they're losing control. They feel adrenaline surge and believe they're in danger. They experience heightened alertness and interpret it as anxiety. But these physiological changes are actually your body preparing you for peak performance. Your heart rate increases to deliver more oxygen to your brain and muscles, enhancing your physical and mental capabilities. Your breathing changes to optimize oxygen intake and carbon dioxide removal, improving your energy and focus. Adrenaline is released to sharpen your attention and increase your energy, giving you access to heightened awareness and enhanced strength. This is your body's way of giving you superpowers when you need the most. The stress response is an incredible biological gift that allows you to transcend your normal limitations and access extraordinary capabilities. It's the same system that allows mothers to lift cars off their children, athletes to break world records under pressure, and soldiers to perform heroic acts during combat. The key insight is that stress is only harmful when you believe it's harmful. Cutting-edge research shows that your interpretation of stress symptoms determines their effects on your body and performance. When you view stress as threatening and try to avoid or suppress it, it creates negative health effects and performance degradation. But when you view stress as helpful and embrace it as a resource, it actually enhances your performance and improves your resilience. Your body responds to your interpretation, not just to the stressor itself. If you interpret increased heart rate as a sign that you're prepared for action, your cardiovascular system functions more efficiently. If you interpret heightened alertness as enhanced focus, your cognitive performance improves. If you interpret nervous energy as excitement for the challenge ahead, your emotional state supports peak performance rather than creating anxiety. The first step: stress reframing. The foundation of stress immunity is reframing your relationship with stress symptoms. Instead of seeing increased heart rate as a sign of anxiety, you learn to see it as your body preparing for action. Instead of interpreting nervous energy as fear, you learn to see it as excitement for the challenge ahead. Instead of viewing stress as a threat to be avoided, you learn to see it as a resource to be utilized. This reframe is not just psychological, it's physiological. When you change your interpretation of stress, you literally change how your body responds to stressful situations. Research shows that people who view stress as enhancing rather than debilitating show improved cardiovascular efficiency, better cognitive performance, and increased resilience during challenging situations. The reframe process involves consciously changing your internal dialogue when stress symptoms arise. Instead of thinking, "I'm nervous and might fail," you think, "I'm energized and ready to perform." Instead of thinking, "This pressure is overwhelming," you think, "This energy will help me excel." Instead of thinking, "I need to calm down," you think, "I need to channel this power effectively." You practice recognizing stress symptoms as signals that your body is preparing you for enhanced performance. When you feel your heart rate increase before an important presentation, you interpret it as your body ensuring optimal blood flow to your brain for peak cognitive function. When you feel adrenaline surge before a challenging conversation, you interpret it as your system providing the energy and focus needed for effective communication. This reframing process requires consistent practice because your default interpretations have been reinforced over years or decades. You must consciously interrupt old thought patterns and replace them with empowering interpretations until the new patterns become automatic. Advanced stress reframing includes anticipatory reframing, preparing your interpretation before stressful situations occur. Before important events, you mentally rehearse interpreting stress symptoms positively. You remind yourself that nervous energy means you're prepared, that increased alertness means you're focused, and that physical activation means you're ready for peak performance. The second step, controlled exposure training. Just like building physical fitness requires progressively increasing physical demands, building stress immunity requires progressively increasing psychological demands. You deliberately put yourself in challenging situations to build your stress response system and prove to yourself that you can handle pressure effectively. This controlled exposure must be systematic and progressive. You start with challenges that activate your stress response without overwhelming your capacity to cope. As you build competence at handling smaller stressors, you gradually increase the difficulty level. This progressive approach builds stress immunity without creating traumatic experiences that could undermine your confidence. Level 1 exposure might involve public speaking to small friendly groups, having conversations with strangers, trying new activities where you might not excel immediately, or taking on projects that stretch your current capabilities slightly beyond your comfort zone. Level 2 exposure might involve public speaking to larger or more critical audiences, having difficult conversations about important topics, competing in activities where your performance will be evaluated, or taking on significant responsibilities where others are counting on your success. Level 3 exposure might involve high-stakes presentations to important decision makers, negotiating in situations where significant value is at stake, performing in front of experts who could criticize your work, or leading teams through challenging projects with tight deadlines and high expectations. Each exposure session follows a specific protocol. Before the challenge, you mentally prepare using stress reframing techniques and visualization exercises. You remind yourself that this is an opportunity to build strength rather than a threat to be feared. You set specific intentions for how you want to demonstrate your stress immunity during the challenge. During the challenge, you monitor your stress response and actively practice using it as fuel for enhanced performance rather than allowing it to overwhelm you. You observe your physiological activation without resistance. Interpret it as preparation for excellence and channel that energy into focused action toward your objectives. After the challenge, regardless of the specific outcome, you conduct a thorough review of your stress management performance. You identify moments when you successfully used stress as fuel and acknowledge those victories. You also identify any moments when you could have managed your stress response more effectively and create specific plans for improvement. Each successful stress exposure builds evidence that you can handle pressure effectively. You expand your comfort zone incrementally. You increase your confidence in your ability to deal with challenging situations. Most importantly, you train your nervous system to remain stable and effective under increasingly difficult conditions. The third step: stress recovery protocols. High performers don't just know how to activate their stress response effectively. They also know how to deactivate it when it's no longer needed. They have specific techniques for returning their nervous system to baseline after high-pressure situations, preventing chronic stress accumulation, and ensuring optimal recovery between challenging events. Effective stress recovery involves both immediate post-stress protocols and longer-term recovery practices. Immediate protocols help you transition from high activation back to baseline quickly after stressful events. Longer-term practices ensure that you maintain optimal stress resilience over time. Immediate post-stress recovery might include deep breathing exercises that activate the parasympathetic nervous system, progressive muscle relaxation techniques that release physical tension, brief meditation or mindfulness practices that calm mental activity, or physical movement that metabolizes stress hormones and restores biochemical balance. The key to immediate recovery is having reliable techniques that you can implement quickly after stressful events. You don't want stress hormones and activation to persist longer than necessary, as this can lead to chronic stress accumulation and reduced performance in subsequent challenges. Medium-term recovery might include longer exercise sessions that provide comprehensive stress hormone metabolism, extended relaxation practices that restore nervous system balance, social activities that provide emotional support and perspective, or engaging in hobbies and activities that bring joy and fulfillment. Long-term recovery practices focus on maintaining optimal baseline stress resilience through lifestyle optimization. This includes regular cardiovascular exercise that improves your stress response capacity, strength training that builds physical resilience, consistent sleep schedules that allow for proper nervous system recovery, and nutrition practices that support stress hormone production and metabolism. It also includes relationship practices that provide emotional support during difficult times. Spiritual or philosophical practices that maintain perspective on life's challenges, and regular periods of complete rest and rejuvenation that prevent burnout and maintain peak performance capacity. The fourth step: building stress reserves through lifestyle optimization. Your ability to handle acute stress is directly related to your baseline level of physical, mental, and emotional resources. When you're well rested, properly nourished, physically fit, emotionally stable, and socially supported, you have much more capacity to deal with additional demands and challenges. This means treating your health and lifestyle not as luxuries, but as the foundation of your stress immunity. Every aspect of your lifestyle either contributes to your stress resilience or detracts from it. Every choice you make either builds your capacity to handle challenges or reduces your ability to cope with pressure. Physical fitness is crucial for stress immunity because it improves your cardiovascular efficiency, enhances your stress hormone metabolism, increases your energy reserves, and builds confidence in your physical capabilities. Regular exercise also provides natural stress inoculation by challenging your body in controlled ways and proving that you can handle physical demands effectively. Sleep quality directly affects your stress resilience because most nervous system recovery and repair occurs during deep sleep stages. Poor sleep quality undermines your ability to handle stress by impairing cognitive function, reducing emotional regulation capacity, and preventing proper stress hormone metabolism. Nutrition plays a critical role in stress immunity because your body needs specific nutrients to produce stress hormones, maintain nervous system function, and recover from challenging events. Chronic nutritional deficiencies can significantly impair your stress response capacity and recovery ability. Hydration affects stress resilience because even mild dehydration can impair cognitive function, reduce physical performance, and increase stress hormone production. Maintaining optimal hydration supports peak performance under pressure and efficient recovery after stressful events. Social connections influence stress immunity because strong relationships provide emotional support during difficult times, offer different perspectives on challenging situations, and create safety nets that reduce the perceived threat of potential failures or setbacks. Financial stability contributes to stress resilience by reducing background anxiety about survival needs and providing resources for handling unexpected challenges. While you don't need to be wealthy to be stress immune, having basic financial security removes one significant source of chronic stress. Environmental factors also affect stress immunity. Living and working in chaotic, noisy, or toxic environments creates chronic low-level stress that reduces your capacity to handle acute challenges. Creating calm, organized, and supportive environments helps maintain optimal stress resilience. The fifth step: stress inoculation through visualization. You can build stress immunity, not just through actual exposure to challenging situations, but through mental rehearsal of stressful scenarios. When you vividly imagine yourself successfully handling difficult situations, your brain creates neural patterns that prepare you for real-world stress and enhance your actual performance when pressure situations arise. Elite athletes use this technique extensively, spending hours mentally rehearsing their performance under pressure before important competitions. They visualize not just perfect performance, but realistic scenarios that include the stress, distractions, and unexpected challenges they're likely to face during actual competition. Navy SEALs and other special forces units use stress visualization to prepare for missions in hostile environments. They mentally rehearse scenarios where everything goes wrong, equipment fails, team members are injured, and they must adapt quickly under extreme pressure. This mental preparation helps them remain calm and effective when they encounter actual crisis situations. Emergency responders practice mentally walking through crisis scenarios before they occur, visualizing their responses to various types of emergencies, complications, and high-pressure situations. This mental rehearsal helps them react quickly and effectively when real emergencies occur. The key to effective stress visualization is making it as realistic as possible. You imagine not just the successful outcome, but the challenges, setbacks, and pressure you'll face along the way. You visualize feeling the stress response activate, and then using it to enhance your performance rather than allowing it to overwhelm you. You mentally rehearse, staying calm when others are panicking, thinking clearly when information is incomplete, making good decisions when time is limited, and maintaining effective performance when stakes are highest. You practice accessing the mental and emotional states that support peak performance under pressure. Advanced stress visualization includes rehearsing multiple scenarios and outcomes. You visualize handling situations where everything goes according to plan, situations where unexpected challenges arise, and situations where significant setbacks occur. This comprehensive mental preparation helps you remain adaptable and effective regardless of how situations actually unfold. You also visualize the physiological aspects of stress response. Mentally rehearsing, feeling your heart rate increase and interpreting it as preparation for action, feeling adrenaline surge and channeling it into focused energy, and feeling nervous activation and using it as fuel for enhanced performance. The sixth step: developing stress mantras and internal dialogue. Elite performers develop specific internal phrases and self-talk patterns that help them interpret stress positively and maintain optimal performance mindset when pressure increases. These stress mantras become automatic responses that activate when challenging situations arise instead of allowing their minds to default to anxiety-producing thoughts like "I'm nervous," "I might fail," "this is too much pressure," or "I can't handle this." They have prepared empowering phrases that reframe stress situations positively. Effective stress mantras might include, "This energy is preparing me for peak performance," "I've trained for this moment," "Pressure creates diamonds," "This challenge will make me stronger," "I perform better under pressure," "I am exactly where I need to be," "This is my time to shine," or "I use stress as fuel for excellence." The key to effective stress mantras is making them personally meaningful and authentic. They should reflect your actual capabilities and training rather than being generic positive affirmations. They should acknowledge the reality of the challenging situation while reframing it in ways that support effective action. Advanced practitioners develop situation-specific mantras for different types of stress. They might have specific phrases for performance anxiety, specific mantras for interpersonal conflict, specific self-talk for financial pressure, and specific internal dialogue for health challenges. They also develop mantras that help them maintain perspective during stressful situations. These might include phrases like, "This too shall pass," "I've handled worse than this," "This is temporary," "I'm building strength through this experience," or "This is preparing me for bigger challenges." The most powerful stress mantras combine acknowledgement of the challenge with confidence in your ability to handle it effectively. They don't minimize the difficulty of the situation, but they frame it as an opportunity to demonstrate and develop your capabilities rather than a threat to your well-being. The seventh step: advanced stress utilization techniques. The highest level of stress immunity involves not just handling stress effectively, but actively using stress as fuel for enhanced performance. Instead of trying to eliminate stress or return to baseline as quickly as possible, you learn to channel stress energy into heightened focus, increased motivation, and superior performance. This involves understanding the different types of stress energy and learning to utilize each type appropriately. Acute stress provides intense focus and energy that can be channeled into immediate performance enhancement. Chronic stress provides sustained motivation that can fuel long-term projects and persistent effort toward challenging goals. Physical stress energy can be channeled into enhanced physical performance, increased endurance, and heightened physical awareness. Mental stress energy can be directed into improved cognitive function, enhanced problem-solving ability, and increased creativity. Emotional stress energy can be transformed into powerful motivation, deeper empathy, and stronger connection with your values and purpose. Advanced stress utilization also involves timing stress exposure for optimal performance enhancement. You learn to activate stress response before important events to ensure peak performance. And you learn to maintain optimal stress levels during extended challenging periods without burning out or experiencing performance degradation. You develop the ability to modulate your stress response, increasing it when enhanced performance is needed and decreasing it when recovery is required. This gives you conscious control over one of your most powerful performance enhancement systems. The ultimate goal: anti-fragile stress response. The ultimate goal of stress immunity training is not just resilience, the ability to withstand stress without being damaged, but anti-fragility, the ability to become stronger through exposure to stress. When you achieve stress antifragility, challenges don't just fail to weaken you. They actually make you stronger, more capable, and more confident. This anti-fragile stress response creates a positive feedback loop where each challenge you successfully handle increases your capacity to handle even greater challenges. Your stress tolerance increases through exposure. Your confidence grows through demonstrated competence. Your performance improves through stress-enhanced focus and energy. People with anti-fragile stress responses actually seek out challenging situations because they understand that pressure creates growth. Difficulty builds strength and uncertainty creates opportunity. They don't avoid stress. They use it as a tool for continuous development and performance enhancement. When you achieve stress immunity at this level, you join an elite group of people who actually perform better when stakes are higher, who remain calm when others panic, who think clearly when others are confused, and who take effective action when others are paralyzed. You become someone others turn to when situations get difficult because they know you thrive under pressure. Most importantly, you gain access to levels of performance, creativity, and achievement that are only available when stress is present. You discover that your best work, your greatest insights, and your most significant accomplishments come not despite challenges, but because of them. Chapter 8: Identity Armor: Becoming Unshakable at Your Core. Your identity is either your greatest source of strength or your biggest vulnerability. Most people have constructed their sense of self on foundations that can be shaken or destroyed by external circumstances, creating a psychological house of cards that collapses when real pressure is applied. But identity armor is built on bedrock that cannot be moved regardless of what happens around you. The problem with most people's identity is that it's dependent on temporary, external, and uncontrollable factors. They see themselves as successful when things are going well and as failures when things go poorly. They feel valuable when they're receiving praise and worthless when they're being criticized. They feel confident when they're winning and inadequate when they're losing. They define themselves by their job title, relationship status, financial situation, social media followers, physical appearance, or other people's opinions. This makes their entire sense of self hostage to circumstances beyond their control. Their self-worth becomes a roller coaster that goes up and down based on external events that they cannot predict or control. Their confidence fluctuates based on other people's moods, opinions, and behaviors. Their sense of purpose wavers based on temporary setbacks, unexpected changes, or external validation. When your identity is built on external foundations, you're constantly vulnerable to psychological attack. A job loss can destroy your sense of worth. A relationship ending can make you feel unlovable. A business failure can convince you that you're incompetent. A criticism can shatter your confidence. A rejection can make you question your value. A setback can make you doubt your capabilities. Identity armor protects you from this vulnerability by grounding your sense of self in permanent rather than temporary foundations, internal rather than external sources, and controllable rather than uncontrollable factors. It creates an unshakable core that remains stable regardless of external turbulence, other people's opinions, or changing circumstances. When you have true identity armor, your sense of worth doesn't depend on your achievements, possessions, or social status. Your confidence doesn't fluctuate based on other people's approval or disapproval. Your self-concept doesn't change based on temporary wins or losses. Your core identity remains solid while you adapt your strategies, improve your skills, and navigate changing circumstances. The first element, principle-based identity. The foundation of identity armor is defining yourself by your principles and values rather than by your achievements, possessions, or social status. You become someone who acts with integrity regardless of consequences. Someone who tells the truth regardless of convenience. Someone who treats others with respect regardless of their status. Someone who keeps commitments regardless of difficulty. When your identity is based on principles, external circumstances cannot threaten your sense of self because your principles are internal and permanent. You might lose money, but the second element, growth-based identity. Instead of seeing yourself as fixed or static, you see yourself as constantly evolving and improving. You become someone who learns from every experience, someone who grows stronger through challenges, someone who views setbacks as opportunities for development, someone who is always becoming a better version of yourself. This growth mindset makes you anti-fragile at the identity level. Failures don't threaten your self-concept because you see them as learning experiences that make you more capable. Criticism doesn't devastate you because you see it as feedback that helps you improve. Challenges don't overwhelm you because you see them as opportunities to develop new skills and capabilities. When your identity is based on growth rather than achievement, you can maintain confidence and self-worth even during periods of struggle or setback. Your sense of progress comes from learning and developing rather than from reaching specific milestones or accomplishing particular goals. Your satisfaction comes from becoming rather than having. Growth-based identity requires embracing the beginner's mind. Being willing to be bad at things initially in order to eventually become good at them. It means viewing incompetence as a temporary state rather than a permanent characteristic. It means seeing challenges as training rather than threats. This identity element also includes the understanding that your current capabilities don't define your future potential. You see yourself as someone who can develop whatever skills are needed to achieve your goals. You don't limit yourself based on your current knowledge, experience, or abilities because you know you can learn, grow, and develop. Advanced growth-based identity includes the concept of deliberate development, systematically working to improve specific aspects of your capabilities. You actively seek out challenges that will stretch your current abilities. You deliberately put yourself in situations where you'll need to learn and grow. You view your life as an ongoing development project rather than a fixed set of circumstances. This creates incredible resilience because you never see yourself as permanently stuck or limited. No matter what challenge you face, you maintain confidence in your ability to develop the capabilities needed to handle it. No matter what setback you encounter, you believe in your capacity to learn from it and become stronger. The third element, contribution-based identity. Instead of focusing primarily on what you can get from the world, you focus on what you can give to the world. You define yourself by the value you create, the problems you solve, the lives you improve, and the positive difference you make in other people's experiences. When your identity is based on contribution, you become less dependent on external validation because your worth comes from your impact rather than recognition. You become more resilient because your purpose is bigger than your personal comfort. You become more motivated because you're driven by service rather than self-interest. Contribution-based identity creates meaning that transcends personal circumstances. Even during difficult periods in your own life, you can maintain purpose and direction by focusing on how you can help others, solve problems, or create value. Your sense of worth doesn't depend on how well things are going for you personally because it's tied to how much positive impact you're having. This element of identity armor requires identifying ways to contribute that align with your strengths, interests, and values. Your contribution might be through your professional work, volunteer activities, creative projects, mentoring relationships, or simply how you show up in daily interactions with others. The key is making contribution a central part of how you see yourself rather than something you do occasionally when it's convenient. You become someone whose primary drive is to add value, solve problems, and improve situations for others.